All right, Shabbos, good morning. Let us begin. We have a beautiful daf ahead of us. Today I want to begin by thanking our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Sivan, Justin and Abigail Rosemore, for dedicating all the Shurim and Drushos this month in memory of their beloved son, Kobi Chaim Yaakov David, Zichron Livracha ben Yosef Tzadok. Our monthly Talmud Torah sponsors as well, Alan and Sue Meyerowitz and family, Jason, Deborah, Justin, Rebecca, Mindy, Simcha, and all the grandchildren, and the merit of a Refuah Shalema for Shulamis Tova Bas Mindel. We thank our Week of Learning sponsor, Adam and Allison Steinmetz and Sherry and Alan Steinmetz, for dedicating all of the learning this week in memory of Harriet Steinmetz, Chaya Bas Meir, Zichron Livracha, on her 4th yahrzeit. We also dedicate our learning in the zechus of an aliyah for the neshama of Shira Yafa Bas Feivel, Shira Saperstein, whose 1st yahrzeit is being observed today. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah, the families in Nechama, and all those who require a refuah will have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. And I will say, with that, let us begin. So we really have a very beautiful Gemara ahead of us today. I just want to point out, we're now going to get into, this Mishnah is still going to, enough with the introduction. Let's just learn. So we'll say Tzadik Dalet 94, picking up 93b from the Mishnah, 6 lines up from the bottom. Let us begin. Hamotzi ochlin pachus mikashir. So we'll say still this one more Mishnah on Hotzah, on carrying, transferring items from one domain to another. Samotzi ochlin pachus mikashir. Supposed to remember again, we spent a significant amount of time highlighting the idea that every item that you carry out has a shear, has a particular requisite amount. So for example, on the most basic level, the shear for ochlin, the shear for food, is a grogeres. Right, that's the pashtus, right? Is a grogeres, is the size of a dried fig. Listen to this case. What happens if one transfers food in a kli, in a utensil? So I'm carrying, Ruvain's carrying food in a utensil from his home into Rosh Hashanah. But interestingly enough, the food is less than the shear. So there's less than a grogeres, less than the volume of a dried fig, but he's carrying in a kli. So he's carrying both of these items out. So what's the halacha? So the Gemara says, Pater af alakli, shakli tfeilos. Suppose an incredible halacha. If you carry out food that is pachos mikashir, so the halacha is, even though you're carrying it in a utensil, so again, I would have been tempted to say that even though you are carrying less than the shear of food, you would still be chayiv at least for the kli. Right? Well, say, think about this. So I'm carrying, let's say, and to keep it simple, I'm carrying half a dried fig. So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, I am not carrying out the requisite shear. So, but it's in a kli. So even if you want to say that I don't have enough food to be chayiv, l'maisa, I'm carrying out a utensil. Nevertheless, the Mishnah says in a case like that, you're pater. Why? Because shakli tefillah. Because we're both saying, again, remember, in this case, the kli is bottle to the food. The food is the primary item. The kli is the secondary item, and therefore the kli is bottled to the food. And therefore, in general, if the food that is being carried does not have the requisite shear, not only am I not chayiv on the food, but I'm also not chayiv on the kli. Pretty incredible. Similarly, as a chai b'mita, if you're carrying a living person in a bed, Shabbos says we're going to see this notion. If it's a chai b'mita, if you're carrying a living person in a bed, same idea. Pater af alamita. You are pater for carrying the bed, shamita tefeilalo, because the bed is secondary to the living person. Rabbi said this goes to the concept. Look at Rashi just a moment. As a chai b'mita, the chai lo mechai v'hotzah. So Rabbi said you are never chai for carrying a living person. Dehu mekel atzmo b'nosei atzmo. Rabbi said this is the concept of chai nosei es atzmo. We assume that a living person goes ahead and essentially carries their own weight. There was, the expression of dead weight. So that expression comes from the idea that a living person, not even consciously, but when they are carried, redistributes their weight. Therefore, ultimately, again, to make them, quote unquote, a bit lighter to the person carrying them. So in general, in halacha, we view a living person as if they carry themselves. So therefore, again, I will say, if you were to carry a living person on a bed, from, let's say, Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, you would be pater. Why would you be pater? Because ultimately, again, you're not chayiv for carrying the living person, because the living person, quote unquote, chay no says has literally means a living person carries themselves, and the bed is tafel to the person. I will say, by the way, this halacha is very important. Anyone with small children, or whoever had small children, knows this halacha, because if you ever find yourself in a situation without an eruv, and your child suddenly has a meltdown and does not want to walk, so what's the halacha? You could pick up and carry the child. There's no eruv. There's no eruv. So lemaisa again, there's the concept of chay nosias atzmo, that ultimately, again, a living person, even a child, quote unquote, carries themselves, meaning redistributes their weight, carries themselves, and therefore halacha lemaisa there's no problem with otzah. So you see this idea that when you carry an item in a kli, right? When you carry an item in a kli, so the kli ultimately is bottled to the item. Therefore, if you are pater for the primary item, you're also pater for the kli that is supporting the item. Similarly, v'chein kizayis min hames, or kizayis min hanavela, ucha'adasha min hasheretz chayiv. So we'll say similarly again, the Mishnah says, I'm sorry, I skipped a line. So the Gemara says, as hames b'mita chayiv, but if you carry a dead person in a bed, so if you have a person, let's say a person who passed away, lying in a bed, and you carry that bed out on Shabbos, since you are chayiv for carrying the mace, you're also chayiv for carrying the bed. V'chein kizayis min hames, so too if you carry out the kizayis from a corpse, or kizayis min hanavela, or a kizayis min hanavela, ucha'adasha min hasheretz, or a lentil amount of a sheretz, chayiv, ultimately, again, you are chayiv. So we'll say, again, there doesn't seem to be such a novelty in that. Now remember, again, all the Mishnah is telling me over here is the remember, kizayis min hames is a significant shear. Why is that a significant shear? Because that's the amount that conveys tumah. Similarly, kizayis min hanavela, and adasha from a sheretz. All of these are considered to be significant amounts, and therefore you're chayiv for otzah. For Rabbi Shimon poter, that I will say, interestingly enough, Rabbi Shimon says in these cases you're pater. Now I will say, we are about to now enter into something dramatically amazing with Rabbi Shimon. Take a look at Rashi. For Rabbi Shimon poter, afilu b'meis shalim. Now I will say, this is fascinating. Rabbi Shimon in general holds that you're going to be pater even for carrying a corpse out on Shabbos. So for example, Ruvain passes away in the house, Shimon carries the corpse out from the house into Rosh Hashanah, or rather, probably with the mace, it's probably the reverse case, right? Ruvain dies in Rosh Hashanah, Shimon carries his body inside, so the Tanakama says you're chayiv for otzah, right? You did an act of transfer. Rabbi Shimon says you're pater, you're exempt. Now what's the pshat? We'll say this is incredible. Rabbi Shimon poter, afilu b'meis shalim, dahavi melacha she'ina tzricha legufa. I will say Rabbi Shimon holds that this is a malacha, not for a constructive purpose. Not for a constructive purpose. V'chol malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, and any malacha, or really a malacha not for its intended purpose, ela l'salka me'alav, have malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, debirtzona lo ba'alo, v'lo hayitzarech la hilchach lav melechas machshav zirub Shimon. So we'll say Rabbi Shimon has a dramatic definition here. In general, we'll say, let me give you a little bit of a construct. Malacha has to be malachas machshavas, has to be something constructive. And Rabbi Shimon says a malacha has to be for a defined constructive purpose. If a malacha is not for a defined constructive purpose, then you are pater. So for example, Rabbi Shimon says as follows: if you are doing something in order to remove something that is harmful, right, or something that is bothersome, Rabbi Shimon does not see that as an active, constructive malacha, or a malacha for an intended purpose. He calls that a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa. So for example, I will say, let's say, again, going back for just a moment, Ruvain dies in the house, he dies in Shimon's house, and Shimon does not want Ruvain's body in his house. So what does Shimon do? Shimon removes Ruvain's body from his house. So Rabbi Shimon says, Shimon will not be chayav for hotzah. But he transferred an item from one domain to another. That's not called a malacha she'tzricha legufa. That is not called a constructive malacha. That is called the removal of something bothersome. And the removal of something bothersome from your domain is not considered to be a constructive malacha. So we'll define this more in the Gemara. Tan Rabbanan, hamotzi ochlin kishir. if you carry out on Shabbos, if you do Hotzah and you carry out the amount of food, and you have the shear, the requisite amount, so im bekli chayiv ala ochlin upatra ala kli. If you're carrying out the food in a utensil, so you'll be chayiv for the transfer of food, but patra on the utensil, because the utensil's bottled to the food. But ultimately, again, I will say, if you need the utensil as well, meaning let's say I'm carrying out food in a utensil, and I need also the utensil in the Rishus HaRabim for some other purpose, then what? Chayiv af ala kli. I'll be chayiv also for the kli. So what says, you could have a case where you carry out, for example, food in a utensil, and you could be chayiv twice. Once for the transfer of food, and once for the transfer of the kli, if you need the kli in the Rishus HaRabim for some additional purpose other than just as the vehicle to transport the food out. Shmamina, what do you see from here? You see from here, Rabbi, say that if you eat 2 kizesim of forbidden fat in one lapse of awareness, that you could be chayiv twice, which is another way of saying that you could be chayiv twice. You could be chayiv twice for 2 acts committed simultaneously. So, for example, Rabbi saying in this case, I'm carrying out, let's call it the dried fig in the utensil. I want to eat the fig in the Rishus HaRabim, but I also need the utensil to scoop out water in the Rishus HaRabim. So therefore, again, the Brisa just said I'm going to be chayiv twice. Once for the transfer of food, once for the transfer of the utensil, because the utensil is needed for some constructive act in the Rishus HaRabim. So you see from here that you can be chayiv twice for 2 acts committed simultaneously. To which the Gemara says, Amar Rav Sheshes, no. Hachama, what's the case? Top of Tzadik Dalid, Kigon Sheshagag al ha'ochlin v'hezir ala kli. Interesting enough, Rabbi said the case over here is that I accidentally transferred out the food. In other words, I did not intentionally transfer the food, but I intentionally transferred the kli. So Rabbi says, and therefore when the Brisa says that you're chayiv, chayiv actually means you're chayiv misa. You chayiv a death penalty for an intentional violation of Shabbos. Maskil Ravashi, 1 second. Vaha af ala kli katani, but that's not what the Brisa says. The Brisa says that you're even chayiv for the kli, which would seem to indicate to us that halacha l'maaseh you're chayiv both for the food and the kli. Ela amar Ravashi kigon sheshagag bazeh ubazeh. No, let's go back to our original assertion. You're shogeg. You accidentally violated, you accidentally transferred out both the food and the utensil. But what happened? Vinodalo, the chazar vinodalo. This is fascinating. But I will say you found out about your 2 transgressions at 2 different times. So first you found out about the fact that you transferred the utensil, and then you found out about the fact that you transferred the food. Ubeplukta to Rabbi Yochanan Reb Shimon Lakish. And this has to do with the machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. What's the machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish? Take a look at Rashi. Beplukta to Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. De efliku biyedios mechalkos. Beperak klal godol. Efluki nami Rav Sheshes v'Rav Ashi Yacha Rav Sheshes de Lamuki Lahachi Kasara de Enyedios mechalkos. Rav Ashi Sarah Yedios mechalkos. So we'll say, so this is a fundamental machlokes that we saw earlier in the Masechta regarding, again, when you have different awarenesses at different times, does that generate separate liability or not? Or do we say that since the acts were committed together, therefore again it only generates one simultaneous liability? So that's a machlokas. Okay, so we'll say, so again, just for our purposes, what we're beginning to see is as follows: is that halacha l'maisa, pretty much the utensil itself, at least according to the Mishnah, always takes on the identity of the item being transferred. So if the item being transferred ultimately, again, has a unit of liability, then ultimately, or the kli itself will never generate separate liability. That's what we're saying. At least that's what the Mishnah says. That halacha l'maisa, the identity of the utensil ultimately, again, is solidified and concretized by the item which it is transporting. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows. Fine. So remember again, if you're transporting a living person in the bed, so you're pater on the bed itself. So we'll say, so remember, since I'm pater for carrying a living person, right? Because chai no seas atzmo, a living person carries himself. Therefore, again, the bed is tafel, is secondary to the person, and therefore I'll be pater for the bed as well. Says the Gemara. Our Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Nassan and not the Rabbanon. Why? Disanya, here we go. What does Rabbi Nassan say? We'll say, Hamotzi behema chayiv over shesarabim. If one goes in and carries out a behema, an animal, remember behema usually means domestic animal, chaya, wild animal, non-domesticated animal, and oaf, bird, into the public domain. So we'll say in this case over here, I'm carrying an animal from the private domain to the public domain, bein chayin u bein shchutin, whether they are alive or they are dead, chayiv. Ultimately, again, such a person is chayiv. Such a person is chayiv. Says the Rabbi Nassan. Rabbi Nassan says, ala shchutin chayiv. Rabbi Nassan says, for slaughtered animals, if you transport them out from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, you are chayiv. Va'al chayin pater. But if they are alive, you're pater. Why? Shachay no se'es atzmo. Ultimately, again, because a living being, quote unquote, transports itself. So we'll say, so Rabbi Nassan subscribes to this concept, ultimately, again, of, so remember again, in this machlokes over here, the Rabbanon are prohibiting the transfer of living animals on Shabbos. They hold it's otzah. It's otzah. So to carry out a living animal from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, or vice versa, according to Rabbanon, it's otzah. Rabbi Nassan says it's not. Why? Because a living item transfers itself. So the Gemara is suggesting our Mishnah that subscribes to the concept of Chai no se'es atzmo, that a living being transfers itself, that's Rabbi Nassan and not the Rabbanon. So the Gemara says not necessarily. Amarava, afilu tim Rabbanon. The truth is our Mishnah could even reflect the view of the Rabbanon. Why? Ad kan lo pligi Rabbanon Rabbi Nassan ela bebehema chayev va'of. So we'll say the Rabbanon are only arguing Rabbi Nassan in a case of animals. Why? Because what happens with animals? Dimisharviti nafshaihu. Because we'll say apparently, if you look at Rashi, dimisharviti nafshaihu. Rashi says mishamtim klape mata umachbidin atzman lahashmit miyad hanosan. So apparently, animals do not like to be carried, and when you go ahead and you carry them, they have a way of making themselves heavier, right? They're trying to propel themselves downward. So the Rabbanon hold that by animals, you cannot apply the concept of chai no se'es atzmo. By animals, you can't. But halacha l'maisa, by people, the Rabbanon would absolutely agree that chai no se'es atzmo. So the Gemara says, Adam chai no se'es atzmo, afil Rabbanon modu. But the rabbis agree with the concept of chai no se'es atzmo, that a living person carries his own weight. And therefore, again, I will say the statement of the Mishnah, that if you carry out a living person on the bed, then halacha l'maisa, you're pater, because the bed is tafel to the individual, and chai no se'es atzmo, even the Rabbanon would agree. Amalei Rav Adabarava, l'Rabba v'hodisnan ben besera matir besus. So let's listen to this. But what about that which we learned in the Mishnah, that ben besera permits by a horse? Now we'll say, now this is actually interesting. We had this sugya before. Look at Rashi, matir besus. Nothing. We're taking just a little bit of a tangent for a moment. Matir besus, Rashi says, lemochro lenochri mipnei shemalechas hasusim haya adam osa osa ein chayav alechatos. The rechiva omeid v'achai no se'es atzmo v'hada asrul imkar behem agas lanachim mishum she'ela. Supposed to remember again. Context here is as follows. As we're going to see, you are not permitted to sell a beast of burden, a chay gas, a large animal, to a nachri. They will say, we'll get into this, but for our purposes this morning, you're not allowed to sell a large animal to a Gentile. Why not? There's a concern that if we allow you to sell large animals to a nachri, what may happen? You may come to rent large animals to a nachri. What's the concern about renting large animals to a nachri? That the nachri may end up going ahead and using those animals to work on Shabbos. Since it's only a rental, it's a Jewish animal, quote unquote, that's working on Shabbos, and a Jew is obligated to make sure that his animals do not work on Shabbos. Okay, so Ben Beseira, however, says that this gzeira, this rabbinic decree, does not apply to horses. Why not? Now back to the Gemara. The Gemara says, V'tanya ben besera matir besus mipnei shu ose bo mulacha shin chayovin alav chatos. Because Rabbi say, what are horses primarily used for? Horses are primarily used for riding. And again, riding a horse on a technical level is permitted on Shabbos. Why? Because Rabbi say, chay no se'es atzmo. Ultimately, again, a living person supports his own weight. Therefore, that's not considered to be working your animal on Shabbos. It's actually very interesting. Both say the reason you can't ride a horse on Shabbos, in fact, is Chazal were concerned. See, you would have thought the reason that you can't ride a horse on Shabbos is because of Shvisas Behema, because you're not allowed to work your animal on Shabbos. So riding a horse is working a horse. Ben says, no, riding a horse is actually not working a horse. The reason you can't ride a horse on Shabbos is out of a concern, the Gemara says, that you may break off a branch to come to hit the horse, because as you need something to goad the horse in order to get it to move. That's the concern. But Ben Beseir says, interestingly enough, even though we said you shouldn't sell large animals to a nachri, lest you come to rent them to a nachri, and he will come to work them on Shabbos, and it's your animal that's working on Shabbos, Ben Beseir says it doesn't apply to horses. Why? Because the primary use of horses is for riding, and riding actually is not considered to be working an animal on Shabbos. Why? Because Chayno says Asmo. So Ben Beseira also subscribes to this idea that a living person supports his own weight. Rabbi Yochanan said, Ben Beseira, the Rabbi Nassan Amru Davar Echad. And yet Rabbi Yochanan said that Ben Beseira and Rabbi Nassan both said the same thing, i.e., they both subscribe to the idea of a chaynos yes aso. But says the Gemara, 1 second. The amrit lo pligi rabbanon Rabbi Nassan ela bebehu chayv of mishun de misharviti nafshay. But 1 second, you just said before that the Rabbanon also agree with the concept of chaynos yes atzmo. And in fact, the only time they disagree is where? By animals, because apparently, again, animals normally, again, position their weight downward. So it's only in the case of animals that the Rabbanon disagree on Rabbi Nassan and say that you can't say by animals, then what? My area Ben Beseir Rabbi Nassan. Why do you only say that Ben Beseir and Rabbi Nassan agree with each other? Va'amrit afil Rabbanon motu. But say, in fact, it should be that what? Even the Rabbanon agree. In other words, let's make this an all-inclusive list. The Rabbanon, Rabbi Nassan, and Ben Beseira all agree to the same concept, at least by people, that Chaynos Yasatzmo. The only point of contention is that the Rabbanon don't subscribe to that concept by animals, because the Rabbanon feel, again, this is machlokes in animal behavior. The Rabbanon feel that when you lift up an animal and try to carry it, it generally tries to make itself heavier so that it cannot be carried. But when it comes to people, the Rabbanon agree that Chaynos Yasatzmo as well. If that's the case, then why do you seem to make this like an exclusive club of Rabbi Nassan and Ben Beseira? The Rabbanon agree with this as well. To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. The Gemara says, the Gemara says, when is Rabbi Yochanan talking about his case? Besus hamiyuchad li ofos. They both say, when did Ben Beseira ultimately again say that you don't have to worry anything about a horse, that you could even go ahead and sell a horse to a nachri? That was the type of horse that was reserved for birds. I will say, what does that mean? What does that mean? So the Gemara says, Umi ikasus hamiyuchad la'ofos. Is there such a thing, ultimately again, as a horse that is reserved for birds? To which the Gemara says, in Ika de Beivaidon. Yes, there is the Beivaidon horse. Okay, so what's the Beivaidon? I suppose it's fascinating. Look at Rashi. The Beivaidon. Shel tzayade ofos. Shenosten alosos ofos kishen chayin kigon nates umino lotzud sha'ar ofos. V'lo misharveti nafshayu v'lo kshiri. V'hashtanami achayin nosi es atzmo umishum halchi amra yochel ben besira v'bnasa amra davrach. This is incredible. So we'll say, so apparently people used to hunt birds with other birds. So I guess like you get like a bird of prey, Nate's is an eagle, right? You get other birds of prey, and what you would do is you would go ahead and use those birds to hunt other birds. So we'll say, but what happens? So now you want to transport. Watch this. You want to transport your hunting birds to the spot of the hunt, but you don't want to tire them out with the trip. So what would you do? They would perch these birds on a horse, and they would transport the birds of prey, the hunting birds, to the location on the back of the horse. It's incredible. So we'll say, so it says the Gemara, that's Rabbi Yochanan said, that's the type of horse. And we'll say, in that case over here, obviously, those birds are chaynos esatzman, right? They, quote unquote, carry their own weight. When Rabbi Yochanan said that ultimately, again, you could go ahead and sell a horse to a nachri, so apparently the Gemara is suggesting it was a very limited category of horses. It was that type of horse that was used for the transport of birds of prey. because the particular use of that horse was such that so all it was used was to transport birds, right? Hunting birds. And those birds, of course, did in fact carry their own weight. Okay? Amr Rabbi Yochanan. So we'll say, let's go on. Umodi Rab Nasan bekafas. But Rabbi Nasan, we'll say, even Rabbi Nasan will hold that Chai Noses Atzmo would agree that halacha lemaisa, if the person, or for that matter, the bird or the animal, was tied up, that in that case, the person or the animal does not carry their own weight. So this is actually very interesting. So apparently, when do we say Chai Noses Atzmo? When do we say that a person is able to go ahead and carry their own weight, which really means redistribute their own weight when they're free to move, which makes sense to us, right? When you're being carried, and it was right, you shift your weight in different ways, sometimes not even consciously. But if you're tied up, then obviously, I will say, essentially, the Gemara is saying is, person who's tied up is dead weight. So therefore, again, halacha lemaisa, that would be an act of carrying on Shabbos. But what about those Persians who are like they are tied up? Now, what does that mean? Look at Rashi. The Gemara says, "Kiman kfisi damu sherochvin mu'utafim bebegadim rechavim v'gamheim atzman me'uganim mehat sagalar." So we'll say, so apparently the Persians used to wrap themselves very tightly in their cloak, to the point that they were like tied up. So the Gemara says, the Persians are like they're tied up. And yet, again, that's how they conduct them. So it appeared that even a person who's tied up, Lamaise could still go ahead and distribute their weight. I'm sorry, V'amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Beseira of Rabbi Nasan Amru Davar Echad. And yet Rabbi Yochanan said that Beseira Rabbi Nasan both said that by people in general, halacha lemaisa, again, people are considered to distribute their own weight. And yet, again, these Persians, we're not making, like, it's not like the Gemara makes any exception. People go ahead and distribute their own weight, except for the Persians, right? The Persians who go ahead and wrap themselves very tightly in their cloak, they're like they're tied up and they don't distribute their own weight. To which the Gemara says, no. Hasam ramos ruchu dinakit lahu. I will say there, the Persians dressed that way as a form of arrogance. So apparently, again, the Persians were very fastidious people, right? And therefore, they did not like to walk on the ground very much. They would ride their animals everywhere. And again, they would wrap themselves very tightly in their clothing, I guess symbolizing the fact that they did not really walk very far in any particular direction. So the Gemara says, but that doesn't create immobility. That's just a manifestation of arrogance. The Gemara says, how do you know Persians could run? So the Gemara says, Dahu Pardashcha, because there was once a particular Persian officer, actually says, Pardashcha Sardiot, which is an officer that the king got angry at him, Virat Tlosa Parsi Bikari, and he ran 3 parsos by foot. Okay, so I'll say, so the point over here is, do not let Persian fashion, right? Do not let Persian fashion make it look like they can't move. They're perfectly capable of moving, perfectly capable of running, and therefore even in this interesting fashion where they're wrapped tightly, still have the ability to distribute their weight. So I will say, of course, what comes out from this is we do paskin hachai noses atzmo, right? We paskin that ultimately, again, a living person has the ability to distribute his weight. And therefore, in this case, if you were to, in fact, carry out a living person on a bed, you would be pater. For there's no hotzah in that case, because obviously for the person, you're not chayiv because he quote-unquote carries himself, and the bed will be considered to be tofel, will be considered to be secondary, ultimately, again, to the individual. And that is indeed halacha l'maisa. Es hameis b'mita chayiv v'chein kezayis v'nameis. But if you carry out a corpse in a bed, you are chayiv, right? Similarly, again, if you carry out a kezayis from a corpse, you're also chayiv. What's another? Kezayis is a shear of significance. It's an amount of significance. It's a significant amount from a corpse. Therefore, you'll be chayiv. So they say, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Pota Hayir Rabbi Shimon Amud Beis, Af B'motzi As Hameis LaKobra. So also remember again, this is incredible. So in the Mishnah we saw Rabbi Shimon in general holds that she'll be pater for carrying out a corpse. Why? Because we'll say, according to Rabbi Shimon, in order to be chayiv for a malacha, you have to do something constructive. Constructive is defined as something being done for a positive purpose. But if you do something to remedy something negative, then ultimately, again, that is not called a constructive malacha. So in general, both say, if you're taking a corpse out of your home on Shabbos because a person doesn't want a dead body in their house, halacha l'mais Reb Shimon will say that is not a constructive malacha, and therefore one will be pater. The Gemara now builds on this, and according to Rabbi Shimon, even taking a corpse out of the home to bury it. Now, both say, I might have thought that burial is a constructive act, and therefore even Rabbi Shimon would agree that Allah l'maisa I am pater. Kamash malano. Look at Rashi. Af b'motzi hasamis lekobro v'lo tema lo pater ela b'manicha l'chutz. Dein tzorech lo legufo shamotzi v'lo legufo shalotza. Dafilu tzorach hamis. But the Swa says, I might have thought that Allah l'maisa it's only when you remove the corpse from the house where there's no constructive purpose for the house owner and there's no constructive purpose for the corpse. That's when you're pater. But maybe if there was a constructive purpose for the corpse, like you're taking it out to bury it, maybe even then Rabbi Shimon would agree that you're chayiv kamash malan. No. Kamash malan said that Rabbi Shimon holds that any time you're doing a malacha, not for an active, constructive purpose, positive purpose, you're pater. Amarava umod Rabbi Shimon b'mar lachbar bo v'sefer Torah likros bo dechayiv. But Rabbi Shimon agrees. But Rabbi Shimon holds that if you take out a shovel to dig with it, or a Sefer Torah to read from it, that you are chayiv. To which the Gemara says pshita. That's kind of obvious. Di'i nami malacha shenetzricha lagufahi ela malacha shetzricha lagufa Rabbi Shimon echem mishkachasla. I will say, if that would not be a constructive malacha, then what would be the definition of constructive malacha according to Rabbi Shimon? So because we will say, what would you have thought? Ad di'ika lagufa ulagufa. I might have thought that maybe the definition of a malacha shetzricha lagufa, positive malacha, Rabbi says, where what? There's a positive purpose for the individual and a positive purpose for the utensil. For example, kigon mar la'asos lotas v'lachbar. For example, I might have thought that maybe you're only chayiv for going ahead and what? Carrying out a shovel when you need to carry the shovel to repair the shovel and to dig a hole. So we'll say, so if that's the case, there's a positive benefit for the shovel. The shovel's being taken out to be repaired. And there's a positive purpose for the person who's carrying out to dig the hole. Similarly, Sefer Torah lagia likrosbo. So what am I chayiv for a Sefer Torah? If I need to take it out to the shram so that the sofer could fix it, and I'm also going to learn from it. So the havamina is, I might have thought that according to Rabbi Shimon, the definition of a malacha shetzricha lagufa is when there's a positive purpose for the utensil and for the person. Kamash malono. Kamash Rabbi say that all you need is one positive purpose. Rabbi say it's very interesting. According to Rabbi Shimon, the definition of a malacha is something that has a positive, constructive purpose. Positive, constructive purpose. So therefore, the removal of a mace from a home on Shabbos, Rabbi Shimon will say you're not going to be chayav for that. Why? Because Rabbi will say that's to remedy something negative. You don't want the corpse inside of your house. And even to take the corpse out to bury it, that's because you don't want an unburied corpse. That's not a malacha shetzricha legufa. Malacha shetzricha legufa needs some positive dynamic purpose. Hahu shachba dahu bidar karas. So we'll say there was once a corpse in the city of Jukaras. Shara Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak lafuki lekarmelis. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak allowed the corpse to be taken out from a home to a Carmelist. Am Rabbi Yochanan achod demar berei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. I don't understand. Kiman, whose opinion are you allowing this? Reb Shimon. So you're allowing the corpse to be taken out according to Reb Shimon. But one second. Emar departed Reb Shimon mechiv chatos. Remember again, even Reb Shimon is not saying lechatchila just go about and start moving corpses. Right? Even Reb Shimon is saying ex post facto, if you did it, okay, it's only Asr Midrabanan. But if you were to ask Reb Shimon, I've got a corpse in the house, can I take it out? Reb Shimon would say what? Reb Shimon would say, no, you cannot. He only says after the fact, if you did it, it's only Chayiv Midrabanan, not Chayiv Chatos. So Rabbi says, so remember again, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is allowing the removal of the corpse lechatchila. So they ask Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, that's not Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon doesn't allow lechatchila. Reb Shimon just says if you did it, only Chayiv Midrabanan. So the Gemara says, Amalei. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak responded, Elokim, the Eilis Be'at. If you were here, I would even let you go ahead and take it out. And even Rabbi Yehuda would allow this. Why? The Gemara says, and And by telling a person, in this case, Rabbi Say, Rav Nachman Yitzchak was saying is, I'm not allowing anyone to move the body from, let's say, a Rishus Hayachav to Rishus Harabim, rather, lekarmelis ka'amina. I'm allowing the removal of this body to a karmelis. Remember again, what is a karmelis? A karmelis is a rabbinic rishus. Remember, a karmelis is an area that resembles a Rishus Harabim, but is not really a Rishus Harabim. An act of hotzah, an act of transferring an item from a Rishus Hayachav to a karmelis is only an Isser D'Rabbanan. So Nachar Bar Yitzchak says, I allowed the transfer of this body from a Rishus Hayachid to a karmelis, which is an Isser D'Rabbanan. And by an Isser D'Rabbanan, Gadol Kavod Abrios Shedoches Lo Saseh Shabbatorah. Kavod Abrios. Right? In this case, again, Kavod Abrios will be the honor of the people living in the home as well as the honor of the corpse. Ultimately, again, allows for setting aside a prohibition in the Torah. Rabbi say, now which prohibition are they referring to? Rashi says, Lo sasra min ha'davar she'gidu l'chayim minu small. So kavod abrios, right, dignity of a person allows for the setting aside of a biblical prohibition. Which biblical prohibition, right? Which biblical commandment? Ultimately, again, the prohibition, or I should say, the obligation to listen to the words of the sages, to listen to the words of Chazal. So therefore, we'll say, essentially, what Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is saying is, I'm allowing the removal of the corpse, for it is only an Isser D'Rabbanan. And in this case, again, where there is a Kavod Abrios issue, there's a dignity issue. To have a corpse in the home for Shabbos is not right to the people living in the home. I allowed for the removal of the corpse. But I will say again, to be clear, even Rabbi Shimon would only allow for would not lechatchila allow for the removal of the corpse. Rabbi Shimon would just say, ex post facto, if you did it, you're not chayiv. But in a case where we're talking about moving it from a Rishus Hayachid to a karmelis, we're only dealing with an Isser D'Rabbanan, and there's a Kavod Abrios issue. So Kavod Abrios issue would allow for the setting aside of a D'Rabbanan. Good. Tanan Hasam. So let's go weiter. Tanan Hasam. Hatolish Simoni Tuma. So it's an interesting case. Let's say a person has tzaras. So we'll say the halacha is, if you have tzaras, not getting into all technicalities of tzaras, you have tzaras, which we loosely translate as leprosy. If you have two white hairs in a particular lesion, that ultimately, again, that's the siman, that is the sign, ultimately, of impurity. So we'll say there is a biblical prohibition to pull out the white hairs. There's a biblical prohibition. Similarly, again, v'hechva hamichya, or we'll say if you singe off another type of tzaras, right? Let's say you have another type of tzaras, and you go ahead and you singe off the tzaras. Ultimately, again, if you do so, over below saseh. Because the Torah says, Hishamar b'nega tzaras. The Pasuk says, be careful with the tzaras affliction. So we'll say, you can't tamper with tzaras on the body. And if you pull out the white hairs in an effort to make yourself tar, or you singe off the discoloration, so halacha l'maisa, again, you have violated a biblical prohibition. Itmar, so we learned, achos mishtayim chayiv. So we'll say, listen to this. Let's say two white hairs, or we'll say 2 white hairs is the minimum to go to make a person chayiv. So let's say I go ahead and I pull out one of the white hairs. I have 2 white hairs on my tzaras. I pull out one hair. What's the halacha? Chayiv. You're chayiv. We'll say obviously, because in that case, what you've done is you've essentially removed the tzaras designation. Now at this point, the Kohen cannot declare the tzaras tameh because there's only one white hair. But there's only one white hair because you tampered with the tzaras. So tzaras tampering is biblically prohibited. So if you had 2 white hairs and you pulled out one, you will be chayiv. Achos mishalosh. But if you have 3 white hairs, so remember again, and you pulled out one. So remember at this point in time, if you have 3 white hairs and you pull out one, on a technical level, you have not done anything to alter the tzaras. In other words, the tzaras will still be tameh. But watch this. So the Gemara says, Rav Nachman will say that you're chayiv in that case. Rav Shesha Samar Pater. Rav Shesha says that you're pater. So let's analyze. The Gemara says, Rav Nachman Amar chayiv ahani masav di mishtach lechad achrisi az leituma. Rav Nachman says, even though right now you only pulled out a 3rd hair, there's still 2 left. But lamais, if one more hair comes out, the nega will no longer be tameh. Rav Shesha Samar Pater. Rav Shesha says you're pater. Why? Hashta miyaha isa letuma. Rav Shesha says right now you remove the 3rd hair, and your act is really inconsequential. In other words, right now, if you look at what you do right now, the act that you perform has absolutely no consequence. Therefore, you should be pater. Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says, Mina Minallah. From where do I know this? So Rav Sheshes says, from where do I know that even though we look at right now, right now, at the end of the day, when you pulled out that third hair, you've done nothing of significance, and therefore you will be potter. So the Gemara is where I learned this from. Our Mishnah, Disnan, Bechein Kizayis Minames. If you carry out a kizayis of a corpse on Shabbos, you're chayiv. So the Gemara says, Kizayis Minanavei Lachayiv. What can you infer from here? Ha Chatzi Zayis Potter. What you can infer from here is that if you on Shabbos you only carried out a half of a kizayis from a corpse or half of a kizayis from an aveli, you would be potter. But we learned elsewhere that if you carry out the half a kizayis, you'll be chayiv. My love, hadisanya chayiv, the apik chati zayis mikizayis. We'll say it must be that in the case where you took out a half a kizayis and the Brisa says that you're chayiv, that's when there was a kizayis. You took out half a kizayis, and we'll say that act is going to be significant. Why? Because Lamaisa now, there's no longer a kizayis to convey tumah. So because you fundamentally changed the kizayis and essentially rendered it inert, that is a significant act, and you'll be chayiv even for carrying out a half a kizayis. V'had is not potter, but the brisa that says that, or the Mishnah says that you're potter for carrying out a half a kizayis. What's that case? The apik chatzi zayis me kizayis umechza. That must be a case where you took out a half a kizayis from something that had 1.5 kizaysim. So if you carry out the half a kizayis from something that had 1.5 kizaysim, that act is really insignificant because lamaisa, you haven't changed anything. Rav Nachman will say, Idi v'idi chayiv in both cases, v'hadisnan potter da'apik chatzi zayis mimes godol. And the one that said your potter is talking about a case where ultimately, one, you go ahead and take a half a kizayis from a very large mace. So we'll say, so it's actually a fascinating machlokes in general, that when you do something that is currently innocuous, but could become exceptionally relevant later, do we look at what you do now, or do we look at the potential impact later on? So you have three white hairs, you pull out one, Rav Sheshes will say you're potter, because right now what you've done is totally meaningless. Rav Nachman will say you're chayiv. Why? Because you've set the stage for future problems. It happens, you both said that by tzaras, the Rambam paskins like Rav Sheshes, and if there are three white hairs and you pull out one, you will not be chayiv, because lemaisa, right now what you've done is totally innocuous. Good, Mishnah. We'll say now we're going to get into some fascinating Hilchos Shabbos. Hanotot tzipon of zubazu. We'll say if a person cuts off his fingernails on Shabbos by grading them one against the other, or Obishinov, or you bite your nails on Shabbos. V'chein saro, similarly again, if you pull out your hair on Shabbos. V'chein svamo, or you pull out hairs from your mustache on Shabbos. V'chein zakano, or you pull out hairs from your beard on Shabbos. V'chein agodelas, or a woman who braids her hair. V'chein akochelas, or a woman who paints her eyes. Again, we'll discuss this case in the Mishnah. V'chein apokeses, or a person combs their hair. We'll see all these cases. Rabbi Eliezer Mechai, Rabbi Eliezer says in all these cases you are chayiv on Shabbos. Chayiv on all of the Shabbos. So we'll say, Rashi says, chatos. Again, we'll see why. The Chamos Mishum Shvus. And the Chacham say that Allah Chalamaisa, all of these cases are only midirabanan. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Elazar, machlokes biyad. The machlokes in Rabbi Elazar and the Chacham is only when you're going ahead and what? When you're going ahead and taking off your fingernails with your hand. So both said the machlokes is if you're biting your nails or you're grating your nails one against the other and taking them off like that. Aval b'kli chayiv. But if you cut your nails with a utensil on Shabbos, then ultimately again you will be chayiv. So we'll say, by the way, it's not just nails. Any of these cases, you pull out a hair, you pull out a hair from your mustache, from your beard. That's what is the machlokes, right? That's where ultimately again. So ultimately, again, Rabbi Elazar says that you're chayiv. The Chacham say that you're potter, or I should say the Chacham say that it's midrabanan. But if you do any of these things with a utensil, it'll be chayiv. So pshita, that's obvious. Zu bezutnan. After all, it says again, you're grating the nails one against the other. Ma'udetema rabbanon bekli nami patri. You might have thought maybe the Rabbanon say that you're exempt even if you remove your nails with a utensil. And maybe the only reason it says it yad biyad is to teach you again, zubazu, to teach you the koach of Rabbi Elazar, that Rabbi Eliezer holds that even in a case where you bite your nails or remove your nails by rubbing them one against the other, that you're going to be chayiv. Kamash malon no. Kamash malon that halacha l'maisa. We'll say what? Kamash malon that halacha l'maisa. That the only time that there is a machlokes is when you're doing this by hand. But everyone agrees that if you're removing your nails, or for that matter, cutting your hair or trimming your mustache or beard with a kli, everyone agrees in that circumstance, ultimately, again, you will be chayiv. Amar Rebbe Lazar, machlokes liatzmo. Furthermore, the machlokes is only for yourself. Aval lechavero divrei hakol pater. But if you're doing it for your friend, ultimately, again, everyone agrees that you are pater. That you are pater. So the Gemara says pshita. Nabosei Rashi says aval lechavero ein yochol la'amin es yadav lital yafa beli kli. So we'll say the only time that there's a machlokes is when you're, meaning, or we'll say, just let's keep a simple case. If I'm biting my nails or pulling hair out of my beard or out of my head, I think there's a machlokes when I'm doing it for myself. But if I'm doing it for my friend, everyone agrees that you're pater, right? Why? Because we'll say, I know this might sound a little bit strange, if I'm biting my own nails, I could be a bit more precise. If I'm biting my friend's nails, besides the strangeness of that, but Lamaisa, if I'm biting my friend's nails, Salach Lamaisa, it's difficult to be as precise. So therefore, again, everyone agrees that if I'm doing it to my friend, or pulling out my friend's mustache hair, beard hair, head hair, Lamaisa, again, I'm going to be pater. Pshita, Siparn of Tanan, it says Siparn of his nails. Ma'odatema, Rabbi Eliezer the Chaver Nami Mechayiv. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer holds that you even chayiv when you do this for your friend. V'hadik Tani Tziparna V'adiacha Kocha D'Rabbanan. And the only reason it says his nails is to teach you the permissive view of the Rabbanan. Kamash Lam. Kamash Rabbo said that Allah Lamaisa, when we this machlokis about biting your nails or rubbing your nails one against the other, or pulling out beard hairs, mustache hairs, or head hairs by hand as opposed to a kli, that machlokis is only when you're doing it for yourself. But everyone agrees that if you do this to someone else, that halacha lamaisa, you will be pater. So we'll stop over here for today. We'll Meretz Hashem pick up with this sugya, really getting into fasting Hilchos Shabbos, and Meretz Hashem tomorrow. Yeshikach will say. For those who are for those who are joining us for davening on Zoom, we're going to end this class, this room now, and we'll restart it again a few moments before 7 a.m.